record. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
This is our first caucus of 2020. It's January 6th in the year 2020. We had a 4 p.m. start. My silenced phone.
No.
Silenced phone. Rich. It says 4:07 p.m. Present, Councilperson Ridley.
Here.
Renzeri.
Here.
Bajano.
Here.
Yun.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Robinson. I know he's on the premises, and the council,
Yes.
and Councilman Navarro is here. Councilman Rivera?
Here.
Council President Waterman?
Here.
Okay, we'll record the gentlemen present when they enter the room. Please take it away, Madam President.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year to everyone. So moving forward, we'll just tackle the agenda as an order. And if someone has a presentation, we'll probably take it at the end because our priority is our agenda. And then we'll go on from there, okay? First come, first serve. Department directors, whoever first, that's how we'll do it, okay? I appreciate it. So Dinah, you was first. You up. She has 3.4. 3.4.
3.4, let me tell everyone what that is. It's an ordinance establishing a revised fee schedule for the registration of vacant buildings and vacant lots, and amending Chapter 254 property maintenance, revising and supplementing the regulations for the registration and maintenance of vacant buildings and vacant lots.
3.4.
3.4.
We don't have 3.4.
First reading.
The first reading, 3.4. You know, when I checked it, the digital, it wasn't.
I'm looking at it.
Digital. I think it was late though.
Late item?
It's in your pile that we gave you, the additional.
No, it's not.
Look at both files and make some sense.
It's not here.
No, it's not here.
It's not here.
On my computer.
We'll get the agenda with your name on it, with the post-it note.
I checked that.
Agree with that.
We have a 1035, 1036 resolution, 1035, 34, and the other one is the spending, you know.
Anyway,
Do you have it on the screen, Michael? 3.4?
3.4 we done.
got it.
Okay. I don't have it.
I'm looking at it too.
I'm looking at it. Go out and come back sometime.
The Brian, do you have a city or hotspot?
Yes.
Can we have it?
Yeah. The username is, what did I call it? City Hall
You
Hotspot.
have to be,
Yeah.
you have to
I got it. City Hall Hotspot is the name of the network.
yeah. Password, can you write up the password for us? Because
Yeah, right.
we don't want that.
Can I buy it? I'm just gonna-
Hold on a minute. Okay, city.
All right. At ease.
Yeah, or have it used the password, Jason.
All right.
And then the name is. That's it. Sure. All right.
Every year this is?
Did you get it yet, Michael?
So every year you gotta pay this. Huh?
Bingo.
So your own property, that's like shit. Go on. But the property.
Yeah, we're waiting for him.
My
3.4.
apologies, Council President. I meant no disrespect.
That is the.
That's what we just gave us.
It's just about it's on the digital system if you want to look at it later.
Okay. Everybody have it? Got it, Michael?
You know, Nadia, I tried to download it here, what are they called? But
Everything's great.
My computer, the power cord wasn't working, so it's dead.
Flying blind.
No, I was looking at this at home. People on that street.
We're doing 3.4?
You have a copy of it?
Yeah, my computer, power cord died.
You have a copy of it, 3.4?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we-
Well,
can
make a
we-
copy and give it
Sure.
to Michael and Rich. Rich, you have a copy of 3.4?
No, I don't.
I'm gonna put it
Okay.
together, I got it.
Oh.
A second.
What are you, back in the Marine Corps?
That is the vacant lots?
Yes.
What committee came up with this?
It's on the end there. This
It's
Michael.
very slow there.
Yeah, why don't you take us through it and
Okay. Okay, you read it already.
Possible, it's
Go
very slow.
ahead, Donna.
Sure, so this,
She'll explain it. but
okay,
you'll
so
get a copy.
the vacant lots registration is part of the property maintenance code. It was added in 2011. It's not just vacant lots, it's vacant property, so it's vacant buildings and vacant lots. And the purpose of it was to be sure that these properties were being maintained. And because they are vacant, by definition, nobody is living there, including the owner. And therefore, registration is needed so that we know who the owner is and who's responsible for maintenance. So that ordinance was passed by the council in 2011. The original registration fees were $250 for the first year and $500 for every year after that. That applied to any vacant property, buildings and lots. In 2018, the council changed the fee structure to be what it is now, which is $500 on the initial registration, $1,000 for the first renewal, $2,000 for the second renewal, and any subsequent renewals, $3,000. What happened is that because vacant lots were just defined as a lot that's, what was the original definition? The original definition included any lot that was where there was, that didn't contain a commercial structure. So what happened was that owners of property, a house where they had a vacant lot next door, were being told not just to register, but now that the fee was going to be $500, not just $250, and that it was going to go up every year. So, understandably, those specific owners were not happy about that. A committee was formed, and the committee has come up with this revision to the ordinance, which in essence, first of all, does not change the fee structure for vacant buildings, which is appropriate because over time, as these buildings deteriorate further, they just cost more money to inspect and are more of an eyesore in the neighborhood. They're just more dangerous in terms of vagrants getting in, requires the city to board them up. There's all kinds of fees involved, or costs involved in vacant buildings. With vacant lots, less so, and so the committee came up with this fee structure, which is just $250 every year that you own a vacant lot. And it only applies, the definition of vacant lot, first of all, is now going to track the language that the assessor uses. So we will, it's any lot that's defined as vacant by the assessor, which means that if it's paved, it is not a vacant lot. Because it's classified differently, so that would be a parking lot, or would, the assessor classifies that differently than a vacant lot that has nothing on it and that has no paving on it. So, again, in essence, these lots are lots that you just want to be sure are maintained, that the grass is cut, that they don't become an eyesore, that they don't become a home for vermin and pests. They should be fenced. The new requirements require that a fence be put up with a sign giving the owners information. And the new requirements do not require this fee or registration for lots that are contiguous to a owner's dwelling. So if they're next door and they are used by the owner, and that includes a multiple dwelling, if it's used by the multiple dwelling for the barbecue, for the parking, for whatever that multiple dwelling may use it for, it does not have to be registered, and it doesn't have, and there's no fee involved. If it's owned by tax-exempt religious or educational institution and used for tax-exempt activity, again, it doesn't have to be registered, no fee. If it's owned by a government entity, if it's owned by the Board of Public Utilities. So those are now all exempt, not just from the fee, but from registration altogether. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think I've summarized what the new ordinance
You said about
requires.
getting grass cut and taking care of the lot. Where's our health department? Where's our buildings department? I mean, if I want to own a lot here in the city, I'm going to pay taxes on it. Now, I got to pay a registration fee? No. If my lot is messy, the health department should get after me, or the buildings department. This is ridiculous, charging when they pay taxes, high taxes on the property.
Well, okay, look, this is really up to the council to decide. The fee for the vacant lot is $250. There are costs involved in inspections, whether it be the housing code inspectors that inspect or the health department or any other department that you're talking about that goes out and inspects. So the question is, how do those inspections get paid for? Is it appropriate for the person who owns the lot to pay for those inspections? Essentially, that's what you're doing. Or is it appropriate just to have that come out of tax dollars? That's up to the council to decide.
I thought we talked about like the $250 just being like administration fees, like office work, paperwork, things like that, registration, entering things into the database, having the owner's name and everything else, right? That was part of the...
Well, in as much as that's the only fee that you're charging for the vacant lots, it's meant to cover everything and included in the cost of what the city does with regard to vacant lots or inspections. But yeah, that would certainly have to cover the fee for personnel to handle the registration. The registration is not cumbersome on a vacant lot. Essentially, what we're asking for is the owner's name and contact information.
Why do
And
we have
we've
a
discussed
tax office?
before.
Don't
Okay,
they
so
pay
I was just
taxes?
going to say, just to get out ahead of your question, which I sort of anticipated, we have discussed here before the fact that the tax records do not give us sufficient information. It just doesn't. It gives us the name of an LLC. We have to then do digging to figure out who is a human being that we can call or summons to court if there is a problem with the property.
And we had, just to let them know, we had a committee and we had meetings all around the city council.
Correct, I should
And we
have
talked to
said.
homeowners, we talked to landowners, we talked to real estate owners, and the fees we originally started with was a lot higher than $250. We was going up every year, but we chose to keep it at $250 because that's what the consensus was around the city. The vacant buildings was something a little different, and it was myself, council president, and Councilman Young that was on the committee, and we had meetings around the city, and we did.
was not,
You wasn't a part of the committee.
I was not.
You're right.
Where was the meeting in Ward C and Ward D?
We had one at Councilman Young's office. Yes.
Yes, we did.
We
Yes.
did. We had one at Councilman Young's office. We had one here in the Caucus room at City Hall, and we also had one at the Bethune Center.
Right.
So,
Go ahead.
let me just make it clear on whatever I said. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year.
So, we gotta have to
You
be...
came to the one at City Hall.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Objective to what was going on.
Council President, thank you.
So-
Feel better already.
Go ahead.
Okay, now, this is what it is, okay? 250 is a cost of the they charge 250 for registration fee. So that 250 minimum cost of administration, yes? That's what it is, right?
Is the minimum cost of the
The administration.
There's no question that it's the
Yeah,
minimum.
that's why,
Right.
when we have a meeting with the vacant lot property owner, so they seems like agree with that amount,
Correct.
250. It's not gonna kill anybody, it's part of their business expensive, so the 250 sounds like acceptable registered fee for them, and the to us, it's a 250 cover enough to our cost of administration. That's why 250 is they agree with their partners. But vacant building is a different story because there are fire inspection, all the other inspections involved, so they charge a higher registration fee. And because they're not simple administration, but they have some special, that time to time, day to day, they have some kind of inspection involved. So the people seems like understand it's fine. But now, that is another my concern is that what is the purpose to us to create this ordinance? Reason is that the city of New Jersey, there are so many vacant lots, and lot is not maintained. Doesn't matter owned by a private or owned by public. But my concern over here, I even sent an email to the committee that registration actually, if they're owned by any government entity, they're exception from registration. So you inspect, your department of inspection go out, inspect the lot, and those kind of owned by government, they don't have to print that sign, post a sign. So even though you send inspect, they don't know who owned it. So now if we see page 41, A and B, number 5. The following vacant lot shall be exemption from the registration requirement. Number 5, that's owned by any government entity. I think even though the government entity, they should be put and registered so you guys know exactly who owns. JCRA or Hudson County or Board of Ed, you know what I'm saying? So you guys are able to demand if owned by lot JCRA, then you guys send a letter to JCRA clean the lot. If owned by Hudson County, then you gotta able to send a letter to Hudson County to so-and-so. So registration should be, they have no exemption for because the government entity. They should be, every vacant lot owned, they should be registered. The public school owned the lot never maintained, the filthy and dirty. The purpose of this ordinance, we try to make sure that they cannot clean. So if you give off for the government entity, is that fair? I think that the government should have more higher morals and the requirement to keep the lot clean. So I totally disagree that give the exemption for owned by any government entity for registration. They should be moved out.
The business administration should be fine.
All right, just to clarify,
Okay, if we see this one, page 41, they call the council president. I think with your new leadership, I think we should do something about the business administration. We should put in all the numbering in on the left hand side.
Pages.
So the page and numbering, so we can tell the exact page.
Right.
Page 3 number is 29. I mean, this one. I mean, they used it the 1950s style. I think it's about time to correct. So now, any ordinance, they should be numbering the left-hand side and the page. But page is okay, 410777. Look, it's 7.
Do you see it, Dinah?
You see
yeah, I'm
it?
looking at a different, I'm sorry, but I printed this out differently. I didn't print it
Okay.
out from there, so I'm looking at it differently. But
So registration requirement.
He wants everybody to be registered.
Except
Except for churches or what?
they're owned by any government entity.
Right.
Number 5.
No, I understand, I know exactly what you're looking at.
We should be not give any exemption for any government entity. You know what is the number one complaint, people? When they have snow, the people complain, they surround the park, they not to remove the snow. I mean, and in the meantime, we sent our inspector, give the private property, give ticket, meantime, we not even maintain our land. Is that fair? I don't think so.
So Dinah,
Right.
everyone should be registered. Will that be a problem? Because it is a valid point though, because
It's not a problem for me.
Property, we own property, and if something is, someone need to clean it up, we should be able to know who's responsible.
Here's
Go
where
ahead.
it gets tricky, is that we can't write we don't want to be writing a summons to ourselves if we don't register. So, and just to be, this is what I wanted to just clarify. The fact that they don't have to register doesn't mean that these properties don't have to be maintained. They do. They all have to be maintained the same way. They just don't have to, if it's contiguous to the person's home, they don't have to necessarily put up the fence. But it has to be maintained. It can't have litter, it has to be, the grass has to be cut. So whether it's owned by a government or whether it's owned by a tax-exempt school or any of the exemptions from registration, they have to maintain the property.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's supposed to be, but a lot of cases they're supposed to not working in Jersey City. Not only Jersey City, everywhere. So if we register, when the people call your office, XYZ address has there's somebody dumped the garbage, then you have a registration, so you know call the Hudson County or Board of Where, you know who is in charge of the maintenance of the lot, so let them come up to clean.
Correct.
But if we don't do that,
If they don't register, you won't.
your phone
I'm fine with that. We can,
Okay.
this language can be changed such that they have to register, but that the fee is waived.
Yes, the
That-
fee is waived. I have no
That might
problem.
be.
That's fine.
Yes.
And in fact, that
That
was.
may be changed 'cause-
That was what we discussed at one point at one of the committee
Okay. It's not a
meetings.
major change, she just added.
Is it,
It's first reading.
Right.
No, exactly.
Okay.
Director, so
So we can.
we remove them owner by any entity, we remove from them, but we willing to waive the fee because we choose a government entity operated by taxpayer, so it doesn't make any sense, let them pay, but at least registration required.
Okay,
Okay? Okay, so now that we agree with that.
that needs to be changed.
so I just want to make an accurate note here. Are you talking about then, okay, I assume then that what you're talking about is not the contiguous property owners, because those, we know who the owner is. We look it up in the tax
Right.
plate and we see it's the same one as the property next door. So those we know. It would be owned by a Board of Public Utility, owned by a tax-exempt educational religious organization or government entity. Those you want the registrations, but we're waiving, you
The
want to
fee.
waive the fee.
Correct.
Okay.
We don't want to hurt them.
Got it.
Also, because they're public entities, so
Got it.
let them continue to give the job. And also,
Anybody else have questions? Go ahead,
So-
James, while he
Do
goes.
you want to just confirm the language right now? I can make the changes in the ordinance right now.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
Just do it?
okay.
Or do you want to just think of language and let me know?
Yeah, I really prefer to write things and
Sure,
Okay, that's
sure,
fine.
no
it's
problem, no
right.
problem.
So, but I'll do that. I'll
Yeah,
do it.
Okay, go ahead, James.
So I had been talking with the committee back and forth and working with the law department on a small language change, but it's not in the draft that's included here. And the very small change is it would exempt lots of 500 square feet or less.
Right.
from
Yeah,
any
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
registration
yes.
fee.
That makes
There's-
sense.
There's one specific lot, it's just not really developable, so why
Correct.
would you make this person pay an extra fee every year?
Okay, Sure. we
And
have to
it's
put
less than
that in.
500 square
Yeah.
feet. So
Okay.
I have the language, and Denise sent it to me, so I can just send it to
Yeah.
you guys to add for first reading.
Okay,
that's
yeah,
fine.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay,
it's
the
not,
only question that I have about that I think should be thought about is, supposing an owner comes to us and says, my lot's 550 by 600. Do I have to pay a fee and my cousin doesn't because his lot is 500 by 500? I kind of think it's a little arbitrary, but that's,
Right.
again, this
Maybe
is
you
your
should just put
call.
a minimum, like a minimum lot size, I mean, because.
Well, that's what-
2,500 usually is this.
Excuse me, wait,
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, I said it's arbitrary if you don't have a basis for it. If there's a basis, as Councilman has said, that that particular size is not buildable or usable, then it's not arbitrary, as long as you can verbalize what the reason is.
But, so I guess that's my question, is a lot that's 600 by 600 buildable? You know, so.
Planning question, yeah.
Well, it's, I mean, basically, the lot size is, it's less than a lot that's 10 by 50 square feet. Right, so 10 by 50 is significantly less than the standard lot size in the city by an incredible margin. I can ask the tax assessor, but my understanding is the smallest lot sizes I'm aware of are 625 square feet, basically. Other than this little tiny section, it's literally, it's ragged in place, it's 8 homes next to the Holland Tunnel that are all that tiny. But that's where the basis comes from. Was like, my understanding of the smallest lot size that I was aware of was 625.
So in other words,
that one section.
Just one section.
James, it's not buildable lot.
It's not a buildable lot.
So if it is not buildable lot, asking to pay $250 every year.
I mean, basically, it's literally a parking space for the person's car.
So one car, right?
Then it literally fits the car. But is it right next door to the house? No, it's not adjacent. He owns one of the other homes, which is why it doesn't fall under the adjacent thing. So he owns a lot and like a home two doors down.
But it's adjacent to the other building that he owns?
No, it's like 2 doors down.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's
All
where
right.
it comes from.
So instead of putting a number on it, can we actually say there has to be buildable lot
right.
size? I don't know how to say it.
I thought that was more vague, because then like, what do someone could come and say,
Get a variance.
Unbuildable for another reason.
right, so I just thought the size was the easiest one, but, and they still have to register, they're just not paying the fee.
Right, that's all.
So that's all they're doing.
Right.
Yeah,
They can build a nice hot dog.
basically.
Okay, just
Okay,
do it.
okay.
Okay, so the director, can I ask another thing?
Sure.
Actually, I discussed with that. Page 42, number 9, with the exception of the owners defined, the sign shall be a post done of the fence, so and so, the 3 by 5, fine. Now we understand, but that the sign have to put in a 3 by 5, 3 foot by 5 foot. Now we're gonna print that here almost A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. 9 different full information.
Yeah.
I think it's too much, as you know, I discussed with them part of it. So when they inspect about the lot, okay, the first things inspector need street address. Actually, inspector doesn't need the tax, block, and lot numbers. So it's not necessary that. Owner's name, understandable, because it's like a give to some kind of a pressure to the owner to name. And also, if his owner is not maintained well, when they in the future come out with a tax abatement, they will show up maybe complain on owners, so maybe we not granted the tax abatement. So owner's name are understandable, but more likely, the purpose of the sign is that we want to maintain the lot. So more important, the owner's email is, I don't think we don't need it. But registration side, yes, you have already. Owner's telephone number, your office already. And the registration agent name, now, more likely, registered agent names, I don't know how much is important, but more likely, we say maintenance company and maintenance company email address, maintenance company telephone number is more important. Rest of that, actually don't need it. It just make a sign so crowded, it's going to be eyesore from the general public. So my recommendation is that street address, owner's name, but we say that maintenance company name, email address, and maintenance company telephone number. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 item in the post 3 by 5. Then even inspector go out, just take the pictures, bingo, and then they able to write a ticket right away.
I would actually prefer to have the registered agent name in there also, because we've had situations in my ward anyway, where you try to get the maintenance company, they don't reply, you try to get to the owner, they're out of state, and the registered agent is the only person that is actually able to speak on the owner's behalf.
See, now this
So-
is what I have to get to track. Actually, those kind of information, they have already.
We have it if they've registered.
When you have a registration,
And
they got that already.
I think the likelihood is that if they're put up a sign, they've registered. I think that, but
But
It's one more line that you're talking
as
about.
a resident, if they can't get in touch with you to get the information they need and all of it is right there, they can just make that phone call right away also.
No, this is what the neighbor called. The neighbor has no enforcement powers, so their call can be ignored. So that's actually registered name, I don't know.
We actually had a neighbor block association call
Yes, yes.
repeatedly, and,
Yes.
and it was very successful, even though they did not have enforcement powers,
But
so.
more proper way to do that, if we see that the very bad maintenance a lot, maybe neighbor in curse call, oh, last night somebody dumped the garbage in your lot, because they have a maintenance company name, so and so. But in a week they not do that, then next step we neighbor have to call her office. We called them weeks ago to give you some course. Notice nobody do that, then they able to track down and the registration registered agent address or whatever she can do this. But
But let me ask you something, Dinah.
yes.
Well,
Would that be of a problem to put the agent name? Because see, each ward functions different, and that's what we have to be mindful of, though.
Well, I don't think we
Right,
thought it was
so-
going to be a problem when we included all of this
Okay.
in the draft, so.
So it can be on the sign, though. Okay, that's no problem. Okay, that's it.
hey,
Any other questions?
so then
Go ahead,
No, no,
James.
it's separate, so.
Go ahead. This is separate.
It's out of, it's off of, once we're done with this, I have to, before you recommend the leave.
Okay,
That's
okay.
where I'm going.
So, Michael, anything else with this?
To me, it doesn't matter, but registered agent name can be also corporation.
No, you're right.
Right.
So it would no sense to put in the registered name on the post. You understand? So you know how the state law is working on. So we try to, as much I could simplify that, simple, so you can enforce much easier. So, and also, it's a postal public, we try to protect the public to get more than information, more than what they need to. Even, you know what I'm saying? It's a privacy issue too. So, register name in the post will be helped to enforce yes or no, that's the bottom line. But actually, when you see that, registered agent name can be corporation, LLC, LP, anything can be done, you know what I'm saying? So it doesn't help us, your side, to enforce that law, what ordinance is. So my recommendation is another waste, so.
But based on when they register, when they register, your office should be able to say what is really necessary for the sign. Because if there's an individual there,
Right.
based on, it should be put there. Your office should determine that. So,
Well,
all that
it
we're
can
asking
be
for
spelled out here in the ordinance. We can say, in the event the owner is an LLC or an
Correct.
entity,
Correct.
you must provide the name
Name.
of at least one general partner or,
That,
same thing for the registered agent. I don't think so, Peter. Does it, if they have a vacant lot, is there a problem requiring them to put down the name of an actual person?
I would need, before I give a definitive answer, I would want to look into that.
Yeah.
Peter, that might be in violation of state law.
It very well might be. I need to check. I don't want to give a,
if it is.
I do think that this was
violation,
looked into
but if not,
when this was drafted.
Okay.
but-
we'll follow up on that.
All right, okay.
But, I mean, that's the way around that, is to
Okay.
require the name of an actual human being.
Good. Okay, we finished this topic. James, before she leaves, go.
I apologize, President. So, there were two late items that didn't end up making it onto the agenda, but they
Okay.
both involved Director Hendon. So I wanted to briefly address them. if that's
Okay,
with
yeah, while she's here.
Council.
Go ahead.
So the first one I think is simple. We had hoped that the last ad hoc committee meeting with the rent control committee was going to be in
Yeah.
December, but it was the day after the December 10th shooting, so we canceled that meeting. So we just have to legally extend the committee. So it's just the resolution that extends the committee for another 2
Correct.
months, just to make sure that we're meeting. And so that'll be on the agenda. The second one, I'll pass around a copy to everybody, and I apologize, there's no misunderstanding about who needed to see it on the agenda. but
Okay.
I think that's fine. pass it around. This is what I emailed everyone about on Thursday, to try to give everyone a heads up. So this is an amendment to the Chapter 160 fee schedule. So people are now registering under the short-term rental ordinance that had been approved by the voters in November. And what we had been doing as a city, and I don't think incorrectly, have been doing is people were paying $250 as their initial permit fee. But then they were being charged an extra fee for their zoning certificate of $100, and then potentially an additional fee from the fire department for their fire inspection, because those are just the general fees that are charged, which is normal. However, I think I felt that we had made a promise to the voters that if you were registering for your short-term rental, your fee was $250. And when you read through our ordinance, it doesn't say you'll be charged additional fees. It says you pay the $250 for the permit. So I felt for us to be fair to the voters and to the people that we should make sure that they only pay $250 to register, and then we shouldn't be tacking on these additional fees. So the language here, which I'll find what page it's on for you, it is on the second page. It just adds this clause that says, the cost of any inspection required by 255-4, which is the short-term rental ordinance, as well as the cost of the zoning certificate of compliance as required by 255-4 shall be included with both the initial permit fee and the renewal fee. So it basically says when you pay the $250 to get your permit, that covers all the fees you would need to get that permit approved. That's basically what the ordinance does. And the reason we wanted to add it late, it's up to you guys, but they can't waive the fee until the council passes this. So it's first reading, second reading, and then we would waive the 20 days. So that would be, a couple weeks into January.
So now, I have a concern about this one. So now, I say that many times, when you talk about the license fee, they should be charged a minimum cost of administration. That's why I said they cannot come up $250. Now, this is like it's a favor to certain special interest group, which is short-term rental people. It's a favor. Now, $250 is a registration cost. Even though they cannot do registration cost, it's a $250. Short-term rental registration cost minimum is $250. Now, then I'm sorry. I know that, that's not so good. But now, when we give the zoning certificate that the fee $100 waived, and how much is the fire inspection fee?
I don't have the number.
$150.
$150?
If it's, I want to say a few things. I'm not prepared to discuss this. I mean, nobody asked me to be prepared to discuss it. I think you, I have a sense of how I operate, and I would have been prepared had I known that this was going to be on the agenda tonight. The fire inspection fee is $150. I think it depends on the size of the building, so I think it could be a little bit more than that. I also think that covers more than one inspection, in other words, if they have to go back out. But I don't know how many re-inspections that covers. I know for my office, there's the housing code fee for inspecting, not this fee for registering, for inspecting. When an owner asks us to come out and inspect, which happens not that often, but it happens occasionally if they're selling a building and they want to, there's a fee associated with that, and I think it's per room. And it's not a lot, but it starts at like maybe $40. And most of these are going to be kind of smaller, and so I'm thinking that they will be in that between $40 and $100, but I don't want to be tied down to that. So there are fees associated with those two, and the zoning certificate is a $100 fee.
We look at the numbers. If the ratio fee $250 for short-term rental, and because of that, we waive them, zoning service $100, fire is $150, then we charge nothing for the ratios for short-term rental. But meantime, they cannot owners have to pay $250. Is that fair? I mean, you go to microloan, citizen microloan go to the zoning department, ask a zoning certification for my building, well, for the, what do they call a driveway, I have to pay $100. But meantime, certain special interest group have to waive. Is that fair? I don't think so.
Let me ask you something,
So what do we
Wait,
call,
wait, wait.
let me finish this one.
Michael, I want to ask James something, because he just introduced this, right? Could we just hold off on this until she come back with some information, because she's not prepared to discuss this way here? We'll get the fees correct, to see if we're just covering the cost, because we don't want to shortchange ourselves at this moment, because if it's not going to cover it, then we're going to...
You're not going to cover the costs. I can categorically tell you that.
Let me just add-
That if, I'm just going to say this, because Councilman Yun has hit on a really key point here, which is $250 covers the cost of registration for a vacant lot. These registrations, these permit applications are involved. It involves making sure that the owner actually lives there, reviewing the documents that they submit. It involves reviewing the affidavits that they're required to have themselves sign, their agent sign. It requires making sure that they have accurately posted the notice to transient occupants in the premises. I mean, if you want to have this ordinance be enforced, there's fees involved. And as a further step of what Councilman Yun is alluding to, these are money-making ventures, whereas a vacant lot is not. So the question is what I said before, what is fair to have these costs paid? Who should be paying for them? And that's for the council to decide.
Let me just add a couple of thoughts. So the original $250 fee was in part set by looking at other jurisdictions across the country. And there are jurisdictions across the country that charge, I think, as best as we can tell from when we look, either more than $250 or certainly not significantly more. And we're talking about fees that would add up to, at $150 for fire, $100 for, zoning certificate. Now you're at $250, so now you're $500. So we're talking about significantly greater fees. These short-term rentals, as we discussed during this debate last year, they also pay taxes, right? And nothing prevents us from using money in the general budget to fund the enforcement that Director Hannon is discussing. In fact, significant numbers of our budgets, right? All these fees go into the general fund, and then we use the general fund. It's not like this is a direct pipeline. None of our fees that we charge, Jim John thought about that in the budget process. And then I think the third thing, and to me the value that's most important, and this is a decision for all of us to make as a council, but the value that's most important is having trust and honesty with voters. I'm not disputing what Director Hendon says, that there's a lot of work that goes into this. But I personally felt like everyone who talked about this ordinance, when you were asked, how much is it going to cost? It's going to cost $250 to register the first year and $200 thereafter. We were asked this question. We put it on FAQs that were on the websites around this campaign. It was discussed in multiple emails. So, maybe you guys felt like we didn't say that. I felt like we were very clear about what the fee was. So I don't feel like I can go back to be honest with my, the people who are asking me and say that I told you the fee would be $250. So I feel like I have a responsibility to be honest and forthright. Now, 2 years from now, we go through this process, we think the fee should be raised. I don't have a personal objection to that because now we've done it. But we just spent, a multi-million-dollar campaign and everyone said the fee is $250. So to me, that's a higher value and we can work with other funding on enforcement issues.
So
but that's up for the council.
Council President?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. This is not the who is right, who is wrong. Actually, you didn't lie to anybody. You say registration fees are $250. So if you waive that joining certification, actually you robbed the admission costs. When you waived the $150 for the fire inspection, you robbed their admission costs. I mean, is that fair?
Is it Rob?
We are robbed because you actually, they're supposed to pay, but now you take away money from. I mean, there are a lot of people believe that I support the short-term rental. It was not the truth because I want you to be fairness. James on council, he never lied to anybody. He say yes, registration fees are $250. Yes, that's a $250. But in order to have that, by ordinance, you have to get certification, joining certification. Yes, when you get joining certification, yes, there will be fee involved. That's normal. You need a fire inspection. Yes, you need a what are they called? The fee involved. Not only short-term rental, anybody, and the councilman Richie Bojano get get joining certification for driveway. He have to pay. So any actions take something cost, admission cost of the maintenance, they have to pay. You didn't like anybody, don't feel get guilty. You know, so
You
now.
just see it from a different perspective.
Yeah,
than I see it.
we can go back and forth
It
for
does.
years. I mean, I
It
think,
does. I see it.
you know, look, I got emails from people who said, you
Yeah.
told me the fee was $250 and now it's gonna be $500.
So now, end of the day, this is what is actually, Councilman James Sullivan, let me finish this one. What you're doing is right, but we not should be just fair to certain group of that, it's not fair to general public, end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Because when a fire inspector go out, the cost involved that, when the cost involved, who have to pay? General taxpayer have to pay for that. Is that fair? It's not. All right, so that's why my opinion, and end of the day, yeah.
Okay, so we can introduce it. Okay, thank you,
Yes.
we can introduce, we discuss it.
Okay, so that's
Can I
fine.
just ask a question?
Okay.
Follow that. So what are the fees that were actually enacted by law?
So in what the voters passed, it's $250 short-term rental permit fee first year, and then $200 as a regular fee. And that's what was written into the ordinance. There's nothing, it says in the ordinance you have to get a zoning certificate, you have to get a fire inspection, but there's nothing about fees in that, in the ordinance, one way or the other.
Those existed previously.
Right,
There's
they're-
a mention.
Right. But this is just
So the ordinance that the council passed had what exactly?
$250 for
registration.
registration.
A permit application.
For an application, and then $200 for renewal.
And that was a permit simply to operate the short-term rental.
Right, but in order to operate the
And then
short-term
what was
rental,
voted on was the same,
Yep.
right?
Right.
So this is a difference of what exactly?
So it's to the person who's applying, it's, as best as we can tell, it'd be $250, right? So you have, if we don't do anything, they're gonna pay $250, as best as we can tell, for the initial fee, and then another $250 for the zoning certificate and the fire inspection. Right? This would waive that second $250, so they still have to pay the $250, but they're not paying, that $250 covers the full process of permit.
well,
We
wait,
didn't pass that initially, is that what you're saying? I'm just unclear.
Yeah, it's there on the book already. So when you need the joining certification, fee scheduled in the our book already $100. When you need a fire inspection, it's a fee on the book $150. So now, Councilman James Solomon is that if we have anybody short-term rental, we should be waive that joining certification fee and the fire inspection fee,
and
which
you're
is
talking about
$250.
the housing inspection fee as well.
I think then they pay $250, which include the wholesale.
I understand, but I'm saying, but that wasn't originally passed by the council.
What was passed was an ordinance that says that the permit application fee, the initial permit application fee is $250. Any permit application fees thereafter are $200. In order to get the permit, one of the requirements, a couple of the requirements are a zoning certificate. It turns out that zoning certificate has a fee associated with it, $100. You have to get a fire inspection. That has a fee associated with it, depending, I think, on the size of the building, about $150. You have to get a housing code inspection saying that the building and the unit is in compliance. That fee depends on the number of rooms. So none of those fees are spelled out in the short-term rental ordinance, but the ordinance says these are the things that you need to have in order to get this permit. And the city has said, in order to get those things, there's fees associated with it.
So which you look at it, that's the cost of the doing short-term business in Jersey City. It's a part of the business expensive.
Yeah.
If they don't want to pay the $100 certification for joining, $150 of fire inspection, then they should fold their business.
Okay, we'll talk about it because we have. to
Right,
move on.
okay,
This is- we spent
that's
a lot of time.
If I can just add one thing to that, which is, could I just ask for a legal opinion then? Because it sounds to me like a modification of the STR, the short-term rental ordinance that we passed. And so it's my understanding that the state statutes regarding referendum, that we're not permitted to amend except by referendum, amend the ordinance that was passed or enacted.
This is specifically not this is not a modification of the short-term rental ordinance that was
I'm just asking,
voted
because we
on.
could be opening the door for a lot of different things, and I want to make sure that what clarity as to what can be amended
Might be.
kind of going forward.
This is
And if I can get a written legal memo, this is first reading, we've got a couple of weeks
Yeah.
here, so we get an official legal memo as to whether this is applicable, whether the state statutes that prohibit any amendments except by referendum, then whether this applies here, and if not, if it doesn't apply, then just spell out for me what sort of changes can be, because I know during that whole process, there were other things that folks brought up repeatedly about whether we could amend this or that and so forth, so.
Okay, thanks, Dinah.
Good. There was one other thing on the agenda, but I sent everybody an email about it, and I'm
We're
gonna
good.
just say
All
that
right.
the email.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Okay, good.
All right,
Thank you.
we have our mayor.
We're supposed to know.
Well, he's worth it.
I'm saying, it's 50 minutes.
Well, it was worth it. 10.22.
That's correct.
Thank you. Say your name for the record. Stephen Fulop.
1022 would be a resolution directing the city clerk to submit a public question at the next general election to be held on November 3rd, 2020, changing the classification of the Jersey City Board of Education from an elected school board type 2 board to an appointed school board type 1 board. Mr. Mayor, welcome home.
Thanks for having me. Congratulations on Madam President. So I just wanted to stop by. I know that there's been a lot of questions, and I reached out to many of you individually, and if there was any question specific to the resolution giving the voters the option on the appointed versus the elected board, the law department prepared a memo responding to questions for Councilman Lavaro. I don't know if we've circulated that one yet.
I did circulate it to the rest of the
So
council.
that speaks to, you know, I think many of kind of the broader questions on the school estimates, on council involvement, on oversight. And ultimately, I mean, we're giving the voters the choice. I think it's hard to argue that what's there is working, and letting the voters decide if there's a better route, I think is a healthy thing to do this November. But knowing that there's probably people coming out on Wednesday, I wanted to reach out and ask if there's any questions specifically for the group that we could touch on today.
Any questions? Good.
So as it pertains to the selection process, Mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten comments about the idea, and I'm just going to speak very frankly about whether we can be trusted essentially to select. And I say this respectfully.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
But given the developments of with regard to at the JCEP as well as at the school board itself, and with the arrest and so forth around that, whether we can be trusted to be able to make the appointments, and the mayor and the council both, whether that makes any difference between doing that with the school board elections. And so I've had suggestions from other folks about the idea of establishing a committee. I've seen that probably been circulated online as well. I understand a couple of other council people may have raised that as well, the idea of a committee. I guess the question would be whether we would be able to establish such a committee. That wasn't outlined in my questions itself. And whether a committee could be established to provide appointments or recommendations for appointments for you to consider for advice and consent to the council.
So the short answer is yes. I want to touch on two things regarding what you referenced, and I've seen some of that regarding JCEP and the Board of Education. I'm not going to put any names out there. But if you think about in that example that people like to highlight, I'm pointing to a couple of things. Number one is in the course of the last 6-7 years, we've appointed collectively 100 plus people to different boards. So to selectively pick one person who did something improperly and say that's a reflection on all other 100 plus people that serve on different boards is entirely unfair. The second thing I would say is, you know, that person is a good example of appointed versus elected boards. He served on an appointed board and he served on an elected board, that person that we're referencing here. And I would argue in that situation that is a good example of an appointed board versus an elected board working properly. When issues arose of potential improprieties at one of the agencies, we submitted that to law enforcement, and resignation followed immediately from an appointed board. I'll point out to you that that person continued to serve another 6 months afterwards on the elected board because there was no mechanism in any way to correct that. So I know people like to selectively point to different things and use that as an example. All you're voting for on Wednesday is to give people a choice this coming November on what they want to do. And rather than us governing based on social media, I think it's helpful to give people that option because what's working there, what's there today is clearly not working. And it's more than just the budgets. I think there's a lot of issues that parents have brought forward. Now, on selection of people, I'm entirely open to any input. I've said that to some of you individually, and I'll stand by that. And we will put forward in February or the second meeting in January, whichever works for you, a standing committee over the next 6 months to outline exactly what type of criteria you want on that board, and I will abide by whatever we selectively decide, whether you want it to be, as one of your council people said, representation from each council people from the community college. We're open to that. We just want good people. And it establishes that oversight board of estimates, which you got as well, which the council ultimately selects 2 people, I think, to sit on it from yourself. And then there's 2 appointed board members. And then also conversation whether there's direct council appointment to that Board of Education. Those are all conversations to have over the next couple months, which I think are relevant ultimately to directionally where we're going. You know, outside of the budget issue, and I think Councilman Yoon probably said this the best last year with regards to people saying we want a check for $100 million, and he was saying I need to understand a little bit more about what you want to do with that money, right? There's issues there around updating the curriculum, which hasn't happened in a long time. We have issues around facilities, which you're all familiar with, which every time we reach out, we have difficulty in getting progress on that front. And then, of course, you have issues around how we're going to be doing shared services. We've had challenges on that. And these are easy things that I think if we had of less political issues around that particular board, maybe we could see a little bit more progress. But we'll let the voters decide, and that's really ultimately what we're doing. So the short answer is yes, and that's a little bit longer because you touched on a couple of points there.
Okay. Someone else?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
I got another question. You, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jermaine.
President,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Councilman.
just a question, I know I got some emails today about in the past week, the reason why the state took over control is because we had appointed boards. Is that something they say it's fair or true? I'm not sure. I was looking online, looking for information, I couldn't find it.
Look, people are going to, first of all, I can't speak to that. I don't know. None of us were here in elected office 30 years ago, and it was an entirely different political world, a governmental world, culture, different people, all of those things. I think there's legitimate different approaches that work in different entities and different government organizations. I think, like, look at judges, for example. Some states have appointed judges, like New Jersey, and some have elected judges, like New York, right? There's merit to all the different arguments. So I couldn't speak to that. I think that in the current situation that the board is in, it's responsible to take a look and ask the voters, and we get blamed for it. There's no question about it. Everybody here gets blamed for what happens in the schools. It's a big priority. If we're going to build the best school city, we need a great school system. I think we recognize that. So, you know, why not take responsibility and say we're ready to be a part of fixing it, and that's really where we are. So I can't speak to what happened 30 years ago, but I think we're making a responsible decision today.
There's probably only 3 people in this room who remember 30 years ago. Bobby, myself, and...
Don't forget the
Oh, him, yeah.
Go ahead, Rolanda. Oh, go ahead, yeah.
And it may have covered in some of the questions I haven't read through all of this just yet. But for the current board members, they would be allowed to finish their term, No?
No,
Okay.
so that's more misinformation that was kind of posted on social media. Peter outlined that based on the size of the city and our school system type, by mid-year 2021, there would be 9 new members selected by you and I, and they would have staggered terms, similar to what you do on the planning board. So
if somebody was serving a 3-year term there, you already have in mid-2021, that would be it, that would be the end of their term.
That would be the end of the term. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So, it's up to ask the mayor. This time I'm going to ask the Peter. Okay. So let's say, put it this way, this Wednesday, coming Wednesday, City Council passed a resolution, okay? So now, after that, the mayor decide, and the City Council tried to work it out, build up to some kind of have consensus about how we're gonna select the Board of Trustees. And we spent some time, months and months after that, we disagree to build up the format how we select the Board of Trustees. That time, because the mayor's suggestion, the council suggestion cannot find some common ground to work it out together. That time, can we pass another resolution, rescind the resolution, what we passed today?
I would say, provided the council were to act prior to the ballot deadline.
Yes.
Which I believe is 70 days before the election. 74
Yeah.
days before the
74
election.
days.
That can be rescinded.
Yes, we had this conversation last night, actually, like that's how Peter and I were discussing this on the phone last night with John. Yes, I mean, I honestly don't anticipate getting to a place where there may be other reasons come August where you collectively decide that, you know what, this board is acting more responsibly than the last 4 years or 5, maybe, right? Or maybe that doesn't happen, right? You could change your opinion. I don't think the issue is I mean, I'm very flexible in how you guys want to select people. I just think you have some responsibility. So like I said to you individually, and I'll continue to say it publicly, I'm going to defer to what you guys want on that.
See, now, my question is that, this is sounds like a very stupid. Why you take that, try to take a point of the end of the day, doesn't matter how much we discount and may put effort, there was some issue going to be raised by Board of Ed, and you get blamed, we're going to get blamed. I mean, politically, when I see that, it's not a smart way to move, but you're willing to go on. What is the reason? I mean, really, because politically, it's a very dangerous move, because
100%.
Today's, you can actually make excuses. That's not our problem.
Correct.
That's a Board of Trustees problem.
Correct.
DOE. But now, once you put your point on now, if anything goes wrong, they're going to blame us, council, and the mayor. It's a politically very dangerous game you put in it. You know that, right?
Yeah. And my view is that I am legitimately trying to fix the system and improve the city. The easier route for all of us is to do nothing, for sure, okay? And you can continue to say that it's not our responsibility and you have these bifurcations, and it'll be a big gap for us as we continue to move the city forward. That's the reality. So I look at it as saying that we do get blamed for it. We might as well take responsibility. It's an opportunity for us to really do what we're doing in the broader city to impact the school system. And I think in other cities it works. It's not everywhere, but it works. And that's how I view it. You know what? Politically, it's definitely a risk. But I mean, no question about it.
And if you take risk by yourself, it's okay, but you ask to join with us to join the tech. So I scratch my head. After you, just signed raise the council paycheck, now you ask to take
I would say that board for the last month, for the last month has, and I highlighted all the dysfunction that's there. I'm not going to go through that. But the last month has been deliberating, publicly who's going to be the board president. That's been the focal point of conversation over the last month, right? It hasn't been about let's talk about the overflowing issues in some of the schools. How are we going to put the state to do this? None of those issues have surfaced, right? Ultimately, I think that each of you have brought at individual times ideas on school facilities. Everybody almost here has, right? You're working on one, like currently, Jermaine and I talk about the property across from the annex all the time, and nothing gets done because it's very hard to coordinate with them. Very, very hard. So we're going to take some responsibility, hopefully, if you guys are willing to, and we're going to prove it. We're going to fix it.
See, my concern is that we got to straightforward that. Since 2013,
I just want to say one more thing. So I said to some of the board members that when they were discussing who to be the board president, I heard about this over the last couple of weeks, and we had conversations, and I said to a couple of them, two, I'm not going to give them their names, but I said to them, well, why don't you be the board president? You have some experience there. You're involved with parents. Seems like a pretty good fit, right? Why don't you put yourself forward? And the two of them said the same thing. They said, well, it's going to be a tough year. You know, there's a tough budget. People are upset about A. Harry Moore. People are upset about that. I'm better off not being out there on it, right? And I kind of scratched my head because I was like, the reason you ran is to have an impact and fix it, right? It's kind of counter the fact that you don't want to be a part of it. So, look, you know, we're going to take this. You guys have had a huge impact over the last 2 years, this council in particular. I think this last 2 years have been the best 2 years since I've been here, and I think we have a window to fix it. I really do.
So, Mayor, don't get upset with what I say. Over the years, since 2008 to be councilperson and elected as 2013, you are the most actually influenced person as elected officer of the Board of Ed. You know what I'm saying? Even though one of the president, you backed him, all those things. So now, general public has a major concern. So now, at the time, you actually, without council consent to your point, you backed him and so on. So I'm pretty sure I'm the only one over the years not involved any Board of Ed elections. You know, I never involved that part of it. As always, I say they are to be independent. So somehow, when you have an opportunity, see, you back up all the actually majority board members to elect, to re-elect, you do that. So if we actually, this council or you is a blend the current board or past board, and we try to hit ourselves, we should say that we're not the gods. So you back up certain candidate to make sure they elect the Board of Ed, but you're not the gods. So you pick up the wrong person, you pick up the wrong person, you back up actually, you know what I'm saying?
So I would say the process today is one where, first I would disagree with that premise because I don't think I've been involved for 5 years on any of those elections. But
5 years was it?
4 or 5 years, yeah. I just
Sorry,
supported generally a ticket, right? But I would say that part of the reason that a lot of people don't want to get involved in it is because of the political process and the elected office component of running for campaigning, all of that stuff, right? And that dissuades good people from saying, I'm going to volunteer my time, because they have to go through this process where they get torn apart, right? And essentially what we're going to be saying here is, you don't got to go through that process, right? We've gone through that process, and you can hold us accountable. People in the Heights know who Michael Youn is, right? And you can hold him accountable, you know? If you don't like the decisions he makes, then you know where to find him.
So another thing is that this is, because before we talk about appointments, actually, you know, that I'm going to ask a question is that I thought about many years ago, because we know that what's going on in the Board of Ed. So now, 2015 was it, when I put in the pay-to-play law, actually, one of the items was, if anybody politically contribute to the Board of Ed, they cannot do business in Jersey City. If anybody contributed the campaign for the Board of Ed, then Jersey City cannot have any business with the Board of Ed. So we should not only be appointed by mayor, city council, but also over time we updated their pay-to-play law.
Fine.
So make sure that to the Board of Ed not influenced by any dollars and a certain interest group to make sure they stay away from the selection of the Board of Ed. We got to put some effort into that.
So prior to, I would say reasonably the summer, right? I'm committed with you. I'm happy to work on that pay-to-play with you and make sure that it's strengthened to a place where everybody feels comfortable that that's not even a possibility in this situation. So that's it. And if you're not satisfied with it, revoke it.
Yes.
You know?
Okay.
So anything else, Rolando? You had a council.
Yeah. So I don't know if you recall, but over a year ago, I forget where you and I talked about this. I brought it up and suggested that with this, it was just fresh, the state funding cuts and so forth, and that we have this huge crisis. And
your idea, correct? I agree.
No, I'm not even suggesting it was my idea. I just had this idea that we should. I think it's a good idea. I think there's merits to the idea because I think there's the idea that you centralize decision making, particularly fiscal decision making around these things. And when you have a crisis, whether it's school funding or some other major crisis for a corporation or an entity or anything like that, you like to centralize decision making so that you can get to the right heart of the crisis. And so the idea has merits, but then going back to this idea of just kind of the public trust around the appointment process itself. And so wouldn't it make sense to, before enacting any sort of referendum or moving it forward to actually iron out the selection process so that the public at large would have confidence that, because I see that as one of the bigger hurdles of trying to get the public on board with this ultimately.
I would push back on that. I mean, we're out there on it right now, right? It will then become something with all the city budget issues and the Board of Ed budgets. It'll be something that will monopolize the entire dialogue for the next 6 months, which is really counterproductive. You have the opportunity to change that, right? I mean, I'm sitting here myself. This is probably the third, fourth time in 6 years because I'm conveying to you myself that whether it's the pay-to-play laws or crafting criteria, I'm happy to be a part of that. And I think that delaying it, you get into this situation similar to what happened with the Airbnb thing, where it just ends up being meeting after meeting after meeting, 2 a.m., 1 a.m., 3 a.m., and ultimately it just creates this sideshow that's really unproductive, in my view. So,
Perhaps one meeting, but I mean, meeting after meeting, I can certainly acknowledge that, but doesn't it make sense for such a major decision to have some public input in this whole process?
You're not making it this public. You're not making a decision. You're giving the public a chance to make a decision.
Right.
To me, it's not like you're not making a major decision. You're giving the public a chance to make a decision. So I would just push back that I don't understand what the pushback would be. If somebody in the public is uncomfortable with anything that we do here, they have the opportunity to say, no, I like what I like today. So, like, I don't really see it as such a major decision. I think people are making it a much larger decision, this vote, than what it really is. All you're doing on Wednesday is giving people the right to vote. That's it. And I think it's pretty clear that there is a lot of dysfunction there. I mean, I don't need to remind you what's going on there. I mean, every board member seems like there's a cloud over them. People highlight one guy, right? But almost every board member has an issue, whether it's an ethics violation, whether it's overseas for a year, whether it's resignations and temporary replacements. It's everybody there.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. James?
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. One is just in terms of the appointments, the formal mechanism, correct me if I'm wrong, is if the voters approve, if the council approves and the voters approves, the mayor would make the appointments and then the council would get to vote on that? Is that accurate?
Yeah, but let me just say one thing on that. Let me say one thing on that is that I am not married to the idea of whether the nomination comes from me or comes from you or some hybrid. I am not married to any idea on that, right? I care about good people. That's it, okay?
Okay. And is there any way you just in theory could you write into ordinance or code, something that would say, hey, this is pure hypothetical, so I'm not suggesting this at all, but like say, one appointment must be a parent. Is that the type of thing that could be legally written in? As opposed to we can discuss it and say this is what we want, but legally is that a doable thing?
I think, I would want to look at that, but I think we can probably get to that point with some kind of drafted.
I think you should just know what those options are.
I think that, outside of the pay-to-play thing is one thing that we should set up over the next couple months to work on, have that move forward, and then a set of criteria and get to a place. I know Jermaine and Denise, I think, mentioned more geographic and ward-specific concerns, like on making sure that there's representation from everybody, but I do agree on the parent component, I know, so happy to go through all that stuff.
The second question I had was, if it's approved, then you have a board of estimates. My understanding the board of estimates sets the overall budget. And I'm wondering to what extent is the board of estimates, if it sets the overall tax levy, how much can it then set the way that we set our budget, over here? Does that board of estimates then sort of, put it into specific, salary and wage lines and operating expenses lines?
The former Board of School estimate did capital improvements, basically.
But it doesn't, I guess that's my question, is how extensive is that budget power? Do they just set the overall tax levy, do they just do capital, or do they actually, can actually set the line items that we do in our city?
Do you answer that, John? We can get back to you.
Okay, get back to you.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Okay, that's great.
You think you guys have a police?
Okay, Jermaine, last question.
So, I think we spoke about it earlier. I just wanted, just for the record, the terms, right? The staggered terms, I think, and this is just my belief that we should have all 3-year terms, because we may argue and fight and disagree on this board, but we still have 4 years to either get it right or get it, not get it right. If you have someone with 1-year term that really wants to be back, I think it just causes a little patronage and say, hey, I'm gonna like vote this way just because I only got 1 year and I want to get reelected. I mean, I think if everyone has the same amount of years and the same amount of terms, that they would be better suited to try to make the right decisions for the long term of the kids, and not saying, hey, I want to do the right thing by the mayor or this council person who suggested me because I only have a 1-year term. And I mean, I don't know if it's a question or it's something you can answer, but I mean, that staggered terms, it always confuses me.
I think it's state statute is the problem.
It's a state statute.
Yeah, it's the state outlines that when we would take ownership in June, whenever the budget cycle is, right? That the 9 people become appointed, some for 1. Everybody has a 3-year term except for that first year where it's some 1, some 2, some 3. So that way it continues to be a rolling situation like the planning board.
And then the subsequent years, each one's going to be 3 years, just rolling.
Just rolling. The following year it'll be 3 years. The following year it'll be 3 years. The following year it'll be 3 years. So only the first year in order to create that staggered situation like the planning board or the redevelopment or board of adjustment or library board or anything like that.
So, Council President, I'm going to ask the last most important questions I'm going to ask. That actually,
He's got the important
no, this
question.
is we have to understand. When they board appointed by mayor, actually in the April election, that time the people have the choice that the board of trustee, also they approve the budget. So now, if we go by November, the referendum, if the people say yes, then the school budget will be approved by the general public, or how they're going to be worked. So my thing is this one, when we try to correct the problem what we have, not only mayor, not only city council, not only board of trust, but also general public should share some responsibility. One of the things is that if we appoint, then people should decide a budget for the board of ed. Can we do that by legally?
Can the people decide a budget for the Board of Ed?
Right, because when in most cases appointment April election, the people elect the April board of trustee and they approve their budget. But when they move to November, they take away the budget approved by general public.
When they move to November, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what was it.
Yeah, well, I'll get you
Let's
follow
find
up on
out.
that,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when we go to appointment by mayor and the city council, but also that November, let them general public approve their budget. So let them general public also take some responsibility at the school.
I don't know legally the mechanism for that.
That's the way they have it.
Okay.
Yes.
They'll find
Can you find out for us?
Yeah, Peter, find out.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Good luck, everybody. Take care. Take care.
So I have additional questions beyond, it can be answered by law or anyone else.
Okay, Laura can answer.
If you want to stay, it's fine.
Okay.
Just, just so I understand it, the 9 members would be appointed, they would each serve 3-year terms, but it's staggered. How does that staggering work?
I think it's just some cumbersome language, I think, in the state statute. But essentially what would happen for the initial appointed board, in order to get the staggering started, so 3 of the people are going to have a 1-year term initially, and 3 will have a 2-year term initially, and then the other 3 will have a 3-year term. So
The third will be up every year.
right, and so then after year 1, the ones who have the 1-year term will be completed. And then
Then they go to a 3-year
the
term.
replacements will be for 3 years. And then after the following year, the people who initially had the 2 years will get a 3-year replacement. And then that starts the process going forward each subsequent year. Every year, 3 appointments will be up for replacement or reappointment.
And if someone should resign in the middle of a term, what's the process there? Is it still the same process of a mayoral appointment with advice and consent of the council, or how does that?
That's correct. And it would be to complete the term that was vacated.
Right.
The unexpired.
The unexpired term. And then my last question, and so for me, I know you explained the dysfunction, but that's not really, there certainly is a certain amount of dysfunction there. My rationale in that is that it could be, you could have elected or appointed people, and you'll still have dysfunction,
Yeah.
depending on the caliber of the people
Agreed.
you put, who are in the office. That being said, for me, the idea of the centralizing of decision-making and being able to come to good fiscal decisions so we can solve our school funding crisis. Is it possible to have a sunset provision so that it goes back to an elected board so that the public would know that democracy would be restored? Because for me, once we solve the school funding crisis, then the idea that you're able to kind of get back to, I would say, business as usual, sort of folks, like if you take the assumption that it's a crisis, then the public will then have the confidence to know that, well, if the crisis is resolved, or if it just didn't work out, right? Like, for whatever reason, can we build in a mechanism to allow for a sunset provision that will allow for?
I actually thought about this in some way. I don't know what's, I don't think, when you read that state statute, that there's a mechanism to formally do that, but I do think that whenever we do put in, I thought about the same thing, that the earliest you could go back is 4 years, right? And in those 4 years, we should be able to make a meaningful impact, right? And I do think that I'd be willing, if I'm still here, and I think the council should, whatever mechanism we can, to put it back up in 4 years. And if they like the process that it is, they'd keep it. And if not, they'd switch back to an elected board. But I think that having some time to fix it is helpful, and we have a commitment to go back, because I don't think we want this in perpetuity, or we want to ask them if they think we're doing a good job on it. I think that's healthy to do.
Okay. All right.
I actually think it's something, whenever we put forward the criteria and like outline the process that we're going forward for in the next, and I think tightening up some of these things, whether it's the pay-to-play thing that's a concern, or the process of who we're electing and outlining all of that, I think conveying to that we'll put it back up in 4 years for a vote, and either the public's going to reaffirm it because we're doing a good job, right, and say, I like what's happening here, or they'll say, we want to move it back, it's in a good place today, or they'll say that you guys did a horrible job, we're going to change back to an elected board, and we're going to throw you out soon, right? Okay, one of those three things, right? Okay, you know?
May I miss that? You said in 4 years we're going to go back to a referendum?
I said that we could discuss, I thought about this, I think it's like a valid thing that Rolando says, but 4 years, I think, based on like some of the things that you all know on shared services and things that we could accomplish in the near term to help on the budget stuff. The budget stuff is a pressing thing in the next 4 years. I think that it's hard to legislate for the next council, right? But I do think that when we put out our criteria on what we're looking to do, it wouldn't hurt if you guys are willing to say that in 4 years, we'll put it back out to a vote again. And if they want to change it back, it's fine. I mean, at least the reason I put this forward is to try and fix this. So I'm not looking to do this in perpetuity. I'm looking to solve it so we're no longer blamed and we're moving in a positive, not only not blamed, but moving in a positive direction. So if we get to a place that we can hand it off, that's great. That's great. If the public wants to, that's great.
Okay.
So who says that whether or not we're doing a good job or a bad job?
Well, I think the same way that the public is going to say in November, right?
So we're definitely going toward a referendum in 4 years.
No, we're not. Nobody said no. On Wednesday, I think that those are discussion points from now, and I would like to resolve all that stuff into the summer, so that way, when people are voting for it, they have all of our plans outlined short of names, right? We're not going to put out names saying, I'm looking to nominate Councilman Yun, right? But we're going to have criteria out there. These are the things that are important to us about this, right? So the public knows what our objectives are, how we're going to fix things, what we're going to do. And if you want to say that at the earliest time, we'll put it back out to a vote. It's fine.
All right.
If we do it by referendum, at least we have to stay 10 years, no?
No, 4 years.
4 years?
4 years.
It's 4.
4 years.
That's only
4
the
years.
change of the election from
Right.
May to November to the 10.
4 years.
All right.
So,
Thank you,
okay.
Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Luna.
Sorry, just on referendums. So when we were going through the payroll tax and the statute referendum, right, for potential referendums, there was discussion about the legal on whether 2 referendums could be at the same time. Could you elaborate on that? And if you're not prepared to do it now, we could get the I think there was a memo issued back then, I don't recall exactly, frankly, but as to whether multiple referendums, so if there was another referendum to come on for this November, for whatever reason, we're only in January. So,
I think that's ballot questions with signatures, only one per, not the referendum. But
I just want to get clarity on that.
Yeah, I'll confirm all those points.
We can have multiple questions and so forth.
Right, and I don't know if the two would necessarily interfere with one another. I don't think they would, if there were to be.
They'd be legally permitted, that's all I'm trying to find out.
That's so fine.
Yeah, I believe so, but I'll confirm that.
Okay.
I just on that, if I remember the memo, just to clarify this, is that the issue was that we thought that the payroll tax, they were going to get signatures the
Correct.
same way that the statute got signatures. And you couldn't have two referendums based on signatures simultaneously on the same ballot. So one of them would have got pushed to the following year, likely the payroll tax. I think it's a different thing versus you guys asking a public question as opposed to signatures, but we'll look into it. Yeah, I think that was the issue in there, but.
I'm sorry, one more thing.
You sure?
Yes.
Always sees the bottom.
There'll be more, but not tonight. But if this resolution should pass on Wednesday, I still, just to say, for the record, I think we should give it a little bit more time before taking any sort of action. But hypothetically, if it should pass on Wednesday, and then it goes to a vote, and we work out everything else with regard to selection criteria, pay to play, and whatever other issues that are out there, and the public then votes for it, what are the further actions, if any, beyond that, if you could prepare a memo on that as to what would happen after that, from the council side and the city side? Like, do we have to take other legislative actions or any other follow-up actions in order to effectuate it?
So that would be in the event that the public were to vote, yes, we want to change.
Yeah.
What actions must the governing body take after that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you got a police presentation, so.
Okay.
Okay. You're up. Sorry.
Okay. Come on, Luna's up. She's gotta go. We gotta give her, after.
John's gonna go. John's the department director.
Oh, okay. But she was next.
Okay.
I'm running to it. She was next. Then you go. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead. 10.6.
I'm sorry?
10.6, let me find us there.
What's that?
10.6 is a resolution authorizing the use of the competitive contracting to award a contract to conduct the annual audit of financial statements and federal and state aid grant programs for the calendar fiscal year 2019.
10.6, right?
Right.
Okay. Any questions?
So our contract expires in December 2019, and we have to go for a new RFP. And our new contract will be ineffective as of March 1st, 2020. So it's basically it's the same like we did it every year, and this is just for 1 year term.
So how much we pay last year?
This is just asking you for the permission so you can authorize the use of competitive contracting. Right now, there is no amount, there is no limit right now. This is just for the permission, and then we can go for RFP.
But I mean, I'm asking you how much we paid last year?
Last year's contract was $299.
$299.
And was it attained by competitive contracting?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Same.
Yeah, same process.
The same process, the same, I used the same resolution, in fact.
Okay.
Okay, James, any question? Anybody?
You voted
Next.
for it last year. It's fine.
All that for that.
10.10. You have a couple, right?
Yeah, I have 3 of them.
10.10.
10.10.
That is a resolution appointing Yvette Sanchez, custodian of the petty cash fund, to the Division of Housing Preservation.
What is it, 10?
10-10.
1010.
And the director, can I ask you just a verification?
CFO.
The CFO. Okay, 10.6, can we have some kind of a report for 2018?
Sure, I can send it over to you.
Yes, it's not only myself. all the
And if you
council.
want, I can send you the new one too for
Okay.
2019.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
But this
yeah,
is the first step. This is the first step. We are
Yeah,
going to
that's-
send it for
That
RFP.
is, that's a separate function.
What are we on, Mike?
10-10?
10
10-10.
use.
That's just appointing a custodian of petty cash.
So we used to have Edward Coleman, who was a custodian, and he got retired. He's no longer working for the city of Jersey City. That's the reason behind that.
Okay, next one, 10.30.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah, that's
So
it.
don't you got 10.31, is that good?
Yes, I have one more, 10.31.
Which is a resolution re-engaging Buck Walrath to provide legal counsel, bond counsel for the city of Jersey City.
Right. We received 2 bids, one bid from Gluck and the other one from MS&B. And I chose Gluck because their rates are the same and they already provide us the service. And we have a good experience with them in the past.
10.31.
Any questions?
What was it, 10?
These are current
10.30.
bond counsel, they are, right?
Yep, that's Jim Fearon,
Okay.
Chris Walrath.
Okay.
And is there any change in the rates?
No, it's still the same. Everything is the same.
That's it? Okay, thank you. Bernadette? No, she gave me, okay, you was next, come on. Come on, who's next?
Let's do it. I'm here.
Right, that's it. Guess we'll stay focused. Come on.
Good evening, everyone.
What are you here for, Drew?
I'm here for resolutions 1029, 1032, 1033.
All right, 1029 is a resolution authorizing a professional services contract to Rand Oren Design, doing business as RoArt, to prepare plans and specifications for the common area tile floor replacement of City Hall.
Correct.
Wouldn't that be grand?
Yeah, essentially, we're moving forward with paying City Hall some attention. One of the impactful things would be the tile floor in the public spaces.
Which number is this? I'm sorry.
This is
1029.
1020.
29. Yeah, so 29 and 32 are related. We are starting to think about making some improvements to City Hall. We've discussed a little bit with the council about bringing the basement sort of back to life and making it usable, creating up some office space down there, also improving some of the council offices, the floors, the hallways, the bathrooms, making some much needed upgrades to the facilities. These are the first few steps that we're doing in our due diligence to understand how much it's going to cost, the timing, the environmental impacts, that sort of thing.
Yeah. 1032, which is the next one, is the first step of identifying hazardous materials.
That's an award
such
of
as
contract to Tovar to prepare a hazardous material survey.
Yeah, correct. So, things that were constructed in this building many years ago are now identified as hazardous and need to be extracted and disposed of properly. So this is kind of going to give us a roadmap on how we need to handle this before we get into any kind of construction, and have a hiccup, which is going to cause major delays and more fees. We want to get out ahead of it, identify what's in the building, figure out what we need to do, and then we have this roadmap to guide us. Whatever direction we decide to go in the future, this document will live on, and we can always refer back to it.
So now, just want to make sure that 2014, job entries here, the 14 or 15, we issue bond, a technical bond. One of the items was that the upgrade to the bathroom situation. They never done almost, how many is it, 6 years, never done. So that was also included this plan?
Yeah, I don't remember what funds we
And
allocated.
basically, we allocate dollar
Yeah.
to bathroom improvement because of that. Was Councilwoman, what was it, Councilwoman, actually, she insists that actually, so they allocate dollar, capital improvement dollars for bathroom improvements. And also we talk about the council office.
Right.
Yes.
So
yes.
this one just a tile for the floor, or the way you say also council office?
This one specific contract is for the floors, but the greater plans are council offices, bathrooms, new elevator, all the things we need to do. The basement is a big one too. The biggest one probably is the basement, making that a usable space again. New
We have-
caucus room, all that stuff. yeah.
We have plans to bring more legislation to kind of continue some of these, public spaces such as the bathrooms and move all those projects forward as well. I didn't know about,
Yeah,
the 2014 money, but
When we
We're
finalize the plans a little more and we have something better to show, we'll come to the council and do a presentation on.
So
it.
then,
But-
that's the case, we bring up the company, the professional service, we're gonna do that. While we not include all those things now, at least based on that,
Yeah,
we can set up the project to phase 1, phase 3, but if you continue to divide that, they have a minimum charge included, so it costs more at the end of the day. So actually, even though we say it's $36,000, it's pay $50,000, but include all those,
include the design fees as well?
yeah.
We have a separate contractor that's already
Is
been
that right?
approved by council doing everything.
Oh,
This
okay.
is a sort of a subcontractor for this one project.
If we go out and hire the design consultant to include the asbestos, we even looked into that, they're gonna hire a specialty firm to do that, and then there'll be an upcharge
Okay.
associated with that, that they're just gonna mark up their number. So instead, we went out,
There'll be a
direct
subcontractor.
source
Okay,
to the,
All right.
specialized
okay.
subcontract.
Can you provide the balances on these? These are capital accounts, right?
I do not have balances in front of me, I can
Yeah,
get them
all
to
four.
you, definitely.
Account.
So the one for 1032, which is the hazardous materials survey, that's an account for environmental studies in engineering. The specific balance today is, I can get it to you, I don't want to say,
John.
yeah, I can definitely get it to you.
Account 44 is capital. Capital, right? Yeah.
Okay.
33, right?
Yeah. And the balances for the other one as well, that's a separate account.
33 is French and Perillo to prepare plans and specifications for the Central Avenue streetscape, roadway improvements.
Essentially, this is similar to what was done on Newark Avenue years ago, where the city went through, did a streetscape project, new curb, sidewalk, lights, trees, benches. So we're just trying to take advantage of some grant money that we do have from the DOT and apply this to the Central Avenue Business District and, work with that area. It's been a while since that section of roadway was updated, so.
This indicates it's capital dollars.
This is DOT.
This is just for the design services. The DOT grant won't cover the design.
Finish with that?
So it's grant dollars?
The grant dollars will pay for the construction aspect. This resolution right now,
$2.5 million grant that we got.
What's that?
$2.5 million grant we got from the DOT.
Okay.
It's not gonna cover the whole project. We're gonna need to find other funding somewhere else, but we think it's important that if we're gonna do anything on Central Avenue, we do it end to end and do it the right way.
Right.
And we just need to get that number from the designs before we allocate capital
yeah.
But are you using capital dollars?
for this design.
Capital dollars for this resolution, yes, for the design,
Okay.
So
Can we get the balance in that as well?
yes.
can I ask one favor? When they design, I like to make sure that the professional service company, they have a more open communication with the Central Avenue side. I'm pretty sure
Absolutely.
Councilman Danny DeVera is well known that, so they have any in the future to limit any problem.
Certainly, yeah, we don't, the more we talk to everyone up there, the more we learn about the nuances that happen, and, it's an easier construction process at that point. So absolutely, we'll keep you in touch.
Please.
Getting off the subject, you're with the engineering.
Correct.
I spoke to Andrew today. Make sure they do something with Sip and Summit and do it immediately before somebody gets badly hurt. In fact, you may be paying for my car, which was damaged. You go 25 miles an hour and hit that bump, you're going to kill somebody, and it's got to be taken care of.
Okay, I know they're already on top of changing the ramps around, and the signage was, I think, up or going
Paint
up.
that street, put up signs, or do something. You know how many people's cars have been damaged in the last 3 weeks?
When
Okay.
when can we address Sip and Summit?
I mean, they.
I think signage for mile-an-hour postings are scheduled to go up tomorrow if they haven't already.
I mean, to shave that bump down.
That bump
We're
has
gonna
to-
look into increasing the run out of the ramp. We went with kind of a more aggressive traffic calming by national standard, which, you know, appears to be a little too aggressive for that area, so, you know, we're gonna look to dial it down immediately. I know,
Well, the reason why I say that is there's already 2 fire trucks that are in the mechanics because of it, and that's a problem. So we need to like shave that down ASAP.
okay,
If an ambulance hits it.
definitely working.
I had a girl sitting in the back of my SUV, and I hit it doing about 25 miles an hour, not knowing it. And her head hit the ceiling, and the person in the front seat, even with, you know, the life jacket on, the life preserver on. Seatbelt, right forward. Something's got to be done, and there's numerous people now that are complaining. Their cars have been damaged.
Yeah, in the short term, they're gonna post new signs up for
Could you just get it shaved?
a mile an hour,
Could
yeah,
you
and
just
that,
shave it?
Yeah.
Just get it
Yeah,
shaved.
already-
That's
we're
it.
gonna increase the ramp length.
So going back to this resolution, so the $368,000 is coming from capital dollars,
Correct.
and so the rest of the improvements, that entire grant is dedicated to these improvements or other?
Yes, the
That-
two, yeah.
Yeah, that grant is for Central Avenue.
Yeah.
Okay. And just for my own edification on that, is that you applied for the grant, it was intended, or do you get the grant and then you determine after the fact which?
It was applied for with Central Avenue in mind, yeah. I think our estimate at that time was about 3.5 million. You know, we usually don't get the full amount, but we got a decent amount, you know, and hopefully can back fund it with some capital dollars and redo that whole section.
I just want to share with my colleague, the Central Avenue is the pedestrian, the sidewalk condition is very bad, and they have average 3-4 lawsuit, and probably they almost close to $500,000 already for settling the case, you know, over the 20-some years. So they have, actually, it's a public hazard, the condition of the sidewalk, so it's about time to correct the problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Do anybody want to ask questions? You have an ordinance, 3.2, right?
Yeah, I can
That's just traffic. Do anybody
touch on
ask
that
some questions
for
on it?
Andrew Vishio. I'll fill in for him. If there are any questions on that one.
3.2.
3.2, council members, an ordinance. No parking, standing, and stopping. No parking anytime on Columbus Drive.
I can speak to this.
Go ahead.
This is we put in the loading zones at Columbus Drive between Grove and Barrow, and worked with the engineering department to do it. And so on the north side of the street, you have significant double parking at all times, and you also have the most Uber destination in New Jersey, which is Porta, and so creating very unsafe conditions. And on the south side, you have people using the travel lane to stop by the gas station. So we wanted to create unloading zones. We did so. We got a lot of feedback, both good and bad. And I think one of the things that came back was the VA facility, specifically on Columbus, needed to have some of the parking back. So this returns, I believe, 5 parking spaces that were directly in front of their location.
Yeah. The Veterans Medical Clinic.
I'm phone with them.
Yeah. And my understanding is we had told them that this was coming, but they didn't get the message. But if folks have a specific, you know, they think it should be amended a little bit, we should have a 6 space, a couple spaces on the north side. I think those, I'm open to that feedback between now and Wednesday before first reading. If people think it can be amended a little bit one way or the other. And so let me know what you guys think. But I think, you know, the loading and unloading zones overall are good, but we want to get the balance right, and we want to get back some of the parking because those are legitimate concerns.
And actually, this is a good job. I give credit to James Sullivan. A lot of veterans height, they complain about this.
Already know in 5 minutes how many spaces.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
Porta, Jersey City is the most Uber to destination in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bernadette.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is. So,
Okay, 10:20.
Hello. Yes, 10:20.
Okay, let me get to 10:20, Bernadette. 10:20 is a resolution authorizing the payment of a claim submitted by Verizon of New Jersey
Yes, this is
for
the,
telecommunications data lines, primary rate interface. Internet and FiOS non-centric services.
Yes, this is for last year. As you know, the Verizon services that we had were no longer covered under state contract, and we were working to move off of them. We did the migration to the new services. That was occurring in September, October, and December. So with those 3 moves, we have effectively gotten off of it. There's still a little bit of cleanup that we're taking care of, making sure all the lines have migrated successfully, which we believe they have. But this is to cover the services that we were using last year.
Any questions?
No.
21?
So between 20 and 21, you have 2 claims.
Yes.
I just have to ask this because we're getting a lot of claims from your office.
Two different parts of Verizon.
Yeah.
The issue for this is that without doing a contract, without being on state contract, this was the only way we could pay them. We weren't able to do without going out for public bid because of the amount of it. And they were services that the city had previously contracted for when it was covered under state contract, that we didn't move off of when the state contract was no longer provided. That happened before my time. I can't explain it.
So these are for services before you were, it says here.
They were the services that they rendered to us last year.
Yeah.
But when the state contract, when Verizon came off, the services that we were receiving came off of state contract. There was a provision under BPU for a couple of years, and that provision under BPU ended essentially in 2015. And so that was one of the first things I said when we got here, we've got to do something to fix this. And it's just taken us a very long time to fix it because I had an injury in my office. But we have finally fixed it.
But when you say it came off of state contract, like, so I'm not sure if I understand. So is it that the contract expired?
Yes. The state of New Jersey issues contracts for telecommunication services, and Verizon was a participant in that. I believe it was 2005 or 7 that...
And we had a contract with them.
And we were using the state contract for those services.
All right.
We continued, the city of Jersey City continued to use Verizon after that state contract expired, and Verizon chose not to renew, did not bid, and was not a provider of services to the state of New Jersey any longer for those services.
Right.
The city did migrate a couple of services over to Broadview. That's the other one that you've seen before. That's under state contract still. But the rest of our lines stayed under Verizon.
So without a valid contract?
We had used a provision initially, which was a Board of Public Utilities exception for those services, and the council was approving those resolutions on an annual basis using that exception. Those rates under BPU stopped in 2015.
Anyone else? Michael?
So Verizon is no longer state contract. So
They have a different state contract. They do not have the services that we were previously using under state contract. They do have different services, which are data services, and those are the services that we are now using because we have migrated the phones from the old type of service to the new type of service. And there's a significant cost savings that's coming as a result of that, yes.
1034.
10, which one?
So
Robert,
20 and 21 were both the,
Yeah.
they were both the same issues.
1034.
1034.
1031.
10.34.
34. 34.
Yeah, microsystems.
We're going to go to 1021.
You did.
Okay, I'm sorry, you got it both.
Yeah, they were,
1034, authorizing the payment of the claim submitted by Microsystems New Jersey
yeah.
in support of our tax assessment collection division software.
So we actually, the assessor and I came to you in October, and we addressed this in October, but apparently the resolution was withdrawn before it was acted upon by council. There was 2 resolutions on that day. One was to pay the back claim, and one was to pay the current year of 2019. The 2019 resolution was enacted on Wednesday, but the back one was not. We don't really have a good explanation for what happened or why. We just know that it wasn't actually acted on.
Any questions?
No. But I have a question. So something not related with this one. So you actually provide the form, but the voice, mail, if it's like a 4-5 mail, and then when the people call, your voicemail is full by 4-5 voicemail when you take it left.
Right, it is.
So you have problems and problems. So now
Are these the desk phones or the cell phones?
cell phone.
Okay.
So now, as you know, average, I'm pretty sure each council member receive at least 50, 60 phone call, and in the meantime, while on the phone, the other phone. So now the voicemail, they can increase a little more, so people can leave the message.
I believe they can. I will look into that and make sure. One of them just, try to keep reviewed messages cleaned out.
Yes,
but I will
cleaned
do what
out.
I will do what I can to see if I can get additional space allotted to the city council.
When you have 3-4 voicemail after that, if it's a...
I can't promise, but I will make the inquiry and I will try to get that
what
done
was
right
the
away.
problem? Can you explain to what was the problem if they not take a voicemail message not more than 3-4? What was the problem?
The amount of space that's allocated by Verizon to each cell phone device, to each cell phone number is limited. And so Verizon wants you to delete old messages so that new messages can arrive. That's their idea. They don't want you to hold on to messages for a long period of
I
time.
think that they not understand actually register side, our council side. While I come from my office to be here, I get more than 5 calls sometimes. Then, while I'm talking, 3-4 boys, they pack already. And while I'm driving, I cannot stop deleting, right? It's impossible.
Well, could you just look into
Yes,
that to
yes,
see if we
ma'am.
can get some more?
Absolutely.
I
Okay,
appreciate
so
it.
please, all right?
Yes, sir.
Come on, John.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
James, 5 spaces, thank you.
Yep. And 5 spaces, 2 dots.
10-1, all right, let's start with resolution.
Yep, resolution 10-1, reserve for uncollected taxes. So basically, this is a line item that we have in the budget each year. It's a calculation. And then what this resolution authorizes us to do is to use the average of the last 3 years of collection rates and compare it to last year's collection rate, and whichever one is the higher collection rate, we'll use that in the budget document.
Hold it, John, hold it.
Any questions on 10-1? 10.1?
1021?
No, 10.1.
Yeah, 1021.
So 3 years average, right? So how was it? Then what is the amount of 3 years average now?
So we'll have that final number when the AFS is complete at the end of the month.
Approximately.
But this allows us the option of, it's always within the 98-point decimal range.
Right.
The 2% variance is through tax appeals and foreclosures.
Yep.
All right, 3.1 ordinance.
3.1 cap bank ordinance.
I'm sorry, which one?
3.1, the first ordinance.
3.1.
Yeah. So this is an ordinance that comes to the council annually. This is cap bank ordinance, which essentially allows the items with inside the cap, gives us a little leeway between 2.5 to 3.5%. So right now, with the cap bank law, we're allowed to raise those figures by 12 million, and this would exceed it to 16 million. It's not saying that we will, it's just saying we would have the option to if some circumstances were to come up. And with that, more importantly, it allows the continuation of the cap bank. So if we do not raise it by that much, we can continue to carry that into future years in the case we would need it. Again, this is not an authorization to increase the budget or to authorize any spending. It's just a variance of the calculation that the state allows through ordinance.
Good night, John.
Any questions? That's it. Shay left, right?
Yes, I had a run to.
Okay, Mel?
I'm going to defer to Sonia.
Huh?
Sonia's going to speak for us.
Okay. Two together.
Yeah.
10:23.
So wait.
10:23.
1023, let me get there. Thank you, Council President. It's a resolution rejecting the sole bid received for a composting machine for DPW.
So we have a resolution that we are rejecting because the bids came in too high, so we're going to go back out to bid.
When you say too high, what that means, how much it was?
The amount that was, it's above our budget.
What was it, your budget was it?
Do you remember the amount that it was?
It was about 3.5 times what we planned on spending.
Is that right?
It was a technical error in the writing of the
Velocity.
Dig a hole, bury it, throw dirt on it, and it'll compost itself.
That's what we were hoping.
Our residents would be pretty upset of the odor.
Okay.
That's why the machine is better.
Any question? 10.4 you have too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
There,
Go ahead.
are you planning to put a new mark?
Yes, yes, we are. Yes.
Okay, great.
We will rewrite it and make sure we put the correct specs in and hopefully get a nice amount of bidders.
Okay, 10.4 you're also here for, that's to accept grant funds for the 2017 recycling tonnage grant.
Yes.
Which one is New Jersey DEP? It's an annual event, 10.4.
10.4.
Accepting grant funds for the recycling tonnage grant program. Tonnage grant.
Okay.
How is this money utilized?
It's to increase recycling efforts, which we develop programs, but this year we also have the new division, which is the Division of Recycling, which will be concentrating on enhancing recycling with composting, education, moving forward.
And how do you anticipate spending it now with the new?
That also includes salaries for the division.
Could we get, do you already have a budget?
Absolutely do.
Could you send us the budget?
I absolutely can.
Okay.
It's the budget that we discussed, remember last year, where you recommended for it to be effective January? Yep, I can forward it over to you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it?
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
James?
James comes up and talks about his
3.3.
ordinance.
Not you, James.
I saw your flash.
There's a James. That's right.
3.3 is a franchise ordinance granting permission to 400 Claremont Urban Renewal LLC, its successors in the signs, to make private improvements in the public right-of-way of Yale Street and Claremont Avenue adjacent to the property located at 17-19 and 53-63 Yale Avenue, and 400 and 148-430 Claremont Avenue, Jersey City. And we have a bunch of blocks and lots which we don't want to. 3.3. James will explain it all.
So, good evening, everybody. First, I just want to wish you all a happy and healthy New Year. So, this is a franchise application. I represented 400 Claremont Avenue Urban Renewal before the Jersey City Planning Board in April and May of 2019. We proposed our project to the Planning Board, and the Planning Board granted the approval for the project. There were a couple of things that the architect for the project, the engineer for the project, and the people in the planning office thought warranted a franchise. So I'm here tonight to ask you to grant a franchise petition for this project. And you have attached to your ordinance a couple of exhibits. So what I did was I had the exhibits blown up because I think it's just easier to show you what I'm asking for rather than explain it to you. But one of the things that's referenced in the ordinance is to use a strip of the city's land for landscaping. So, and that would be on Yale Avenue. So let me show you exactly what it is we're asking for. So this is the ground floor of the building and the streetscape of the building on Yale. Thanks. And this was an industrial building. It was there for many, many, many years, and so it ended up having an irregular sidewalk, I guess, when it was constructed. So the sidewalk was way wider than what a typical sidewalk is. In some places, the distance between the street and the property line was 17 feet. Other places, it was more like 15 feet. So obviously the developer can only build up to the property line, so that's all that the developer has done. So we're not asking you to allow the building to be on the public right of way. The sidewalks, the redevelopment plan, the call for 440 redevelopment plan requires the sidewalks to be 9 feet, at least 9 feet wide. So the planning board approved 9-foot sidewalks, but that leaves some dead space between the public right-of-way and the building. So what the architects and the planners recommended was that rather than just leaving dead space there, that the developer fill it in with landscaping. So effectively, that's what we're asking you for permission to do. There's going to be a wrought iron fence right here. This area that's in yellow is actually part of the public right-of-way. It's going to be filled in with landscaping that the developer is going to maintain and take care of as part of the project. The other thing that this is important for is the street is on an incline, but the building has to be level. So there's one end of the building where some of the residential units have windows that are just a little bit lower to the ground than would normally be. So the other thing that the landscaping does is it kind of creates a buffer between the windows and the public right-of-way. And that's really the first part of the franchise that we're asking for. It's to fill in this dead space with landscaping and a wrought iron fence to create kind of the separation between the sidewalk and where the building is. Questions?
What's there now?
What's there now? So the industrial building was demolished, so it was vacant. My client has already started construction of the project, because they got planning board approval.
So then let me ask this one. Instead to take a 5 foot wide from the sidewalk, why they're not able to do their 5 foot setback from their property line?
Not required to under the redevelopment plan. They're allowed to build up to the property line per the redevelopment plan, and I think there's a reason why for that, because on the other side of the street and further down on both ends, there's not too much of a setback. Most of the homes are built that way. So this was to be make it consistent. I guess the planning was to make it consistent with the rest of the block. And in fact, the sidewalks are the exact same width as when you go up and down Yale past the project, so that these sidewalks are exactly consistent and symmetrical with the sidewalks for the rest of the neighborhood. Sure.
Let me ask something. I was asked today, is there a law in Jersey City that sidewalks are supposed to be 20 foot wide? Do you know?
20 foot wide? So my answer to that would be that most of the work I do is based upon redevelopment plan work, and they all have different dimensions. Most of the time it's 10 feet wide, not 20.
10?
20 is extremely
All
wide.
right, well, I was asked today and I didn't know.
Yeah, it's usually 10 feet wide. That's the ideal sidewalk.
You said your client went before the planning board in April, May of...
Yes, and this was approved, the project was approved. This
That was for
landscaping
site plan
plan.
approvals.
Huh?
That was for site plan approvals?
Yes, site plan approval was granted. This plan, this landscaping plan was part of it, but of course, the planning board and the developer recognized that we need to come to the
Yeah,
city
the
council.
planning board can't grant a franchise.
Right,
Were there amendments to the plan at that point or at time or?
no amendments to the plan. It was built, this is for the
As of
most
right.
part an as-of-right project, or if minor deviations.
And what's being built?
It's a residential project with retail on the ground floor, which I can show you, and parking.
It's on the Claremont Avenue side, the retail is.
If I'm correct, on the Yale Avenue side is all residential.
Yes, and I'll show you another diagram.
How many units?
When we get there. It's in the ordinance, 631.
Who's the developer? Who's your client?
My client is 400 Claremont Avenue. It's Art Johnson and Dean Geibel.
Yeah, Dean Geibel. Remember Dean Geibel, French? So let me ask, has the city vetted these applicants for any other properties? Sorry, Jim, your client has history with this council.
Well, my main client is Art Johnson, but Dean Geibel is involved in the project. But in terms of vetting, we appear...
Tax abatement compliance, I recall there was right? Dean Geibel?
Yeah.
Was he second place?
Yeah.
He had Senate Place, and he had the one down here,
One downtown.
downtown, phase 1, phase 2, I forgot the name of the project. Called Cove.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And there were big issues there with regard to tax abatements.
Senate Place and what was the other one?
Called Cove.
Two.
That's the one I know of, right?
And just find out
So,
if it's compliant.
now, can I start asking a question? President?
On that.
Okay, so this is my concern. The projects, I don't care about what the regional plan say there. I mean, when they build, they can build a setback 5 foot and they start to build building. But now, if you see the franchise area 1, 5 foot is a 17 or 15 wide sidewalk. They took away like 1/3 of sidewalk and 190. So they take like a 1,950. Area 2, 300. Area 3 is a 2,940. So they took away public right-of-way almost 5,000 square feet. And they're going to pay city of $1 a year in 20 years. Is that fair?
Well, but I don't think that's really accurate. I understand what you're saying, but they didn't take anything away. This is basically dead space. If you deny this, the only thing that's going to happen is this building's not going to have a strip of landscaping in front of it, which doesn't make sense from a planning perspective. You don't want dead space, you want green space. You want it to be nice, to have a nice frontage along Yale. There's people that live all on the other side of this project. So my client built, if there was a setback, you would still have this space. Or I would have to come to you and ask you for a franchise to build the sidewalk in the public right of way. So I understand where you're
If you
going,
make
but
setback
in this case,
is a...
in this case, this is dead space that's being filled in with green space. Or I could come to you and say, give me a franchise to build 5 more feet of cement. Is that what you want? Or there could be nothing there. So I think that it is fair for it to be $1 because this does nothing more than improve the neighborhood.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? They will
Looking
find
into
out
the
if
tax
they
rate
comply.
compliance, and any housing code compliance as well, right? So
Okay.
for any of their existing properties.
Just one more thing, so there's one other part of this. So now this is the other side.
It's a different project?
No, same project, but the franchise ordinance has 2 requests in it. So the blue down here is a request for canopies and awnings to just go 5 feet into the sidewalk's airspace. So you would have, this is the public right of way, and the canopies and the awnings are just going to be 5 feet above. None of them are going to be less than 9 feet high, so the public will have plenty of opportunity to walk under them. There's not going to be any poles or anything because these things are going to be attached to the building above.
Okay.
So, and this is the other exhibit that you have in your ordinance. It just shows the dimensions of the awnings and the canopies.
So
And
the
this is-
awning has no poles on the sidewalk,
No poles on the side.
just the awning itself, right?
Just above, because they're going to be hanging from the building. So basically, it's just to dress up the main facade of the building a little bit, give it a little bit more class, make it a little bit nicer.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Jim,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Jim, Art Johnson, is he Oklahoma?
I'm sorry.
You said Art Johnson, right?
Yeah, Art Johnson was actually the main developer of Senate Place.
Okay. Is
Before
he
we-
also Hovnanian? Is that, no?
Hovnanian, he's not with Hovnanian, he's independent.
So the business administrator, before we grant the franchise agreement, we gotta make sure any outstanding.
Yeah,
violation-
yeah, he's looking into it,
Yeah.
yeah. He'll make sure. Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Okay.
Take it from the top, Robert.
Okay, we did first reading ordinances. Go right to resolutions.
Did we do all first reading orders?
Yes, we did.
We did.
We did, even the late item.
We did all 4 of them.
All right, we did 10.1 with John Metro, 10.2 authorizes the execution of a quit claim deed to correct the title defects at 58 Bevan Street.
She said 10.1.
10.3 is a resolution calling for a moratorium on amendments to redevelopment plans and variances.
Oh,
James, did you?
I haven't yet, but I'll send everybody this.
10.3?
You wanna wait?
I mean, if we could wait just 2 more weeks.
Okay.
but that's just-
10.3, right?
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
wait.
Just 2 more weeks.
Okay.
I apologize, it's just busy.
We talked about the moratorium that we did.
Yeah.
Right?
We're gonna,
We're gonna withdraw.
yeah,
Just 2 more weeks.
just 2 more weeks.
Oh, okay.
Promise you I'll get it.
Before we move on,
Be on
can I
the
just-
agenda for 123.
What are we doing with those 4.1, 4.2?
The ones with the cans we've been kicking down the road?
I mean, I think we can, my view is we can table it at this point. I don't know if you guys think, but I think on 4.1, we've kind of come up with a plan that we're moving forward with, which we can share with the resolution at the next council meeting. And then 4.2, I think we're, hopefully have the rec control pretty close to committee work, so I think we can push it through.
Okay. Not re-advertise in the future. No, I'm trying to understand.
Tabled after public hearing?
Tabled and not kicked out.
Just
Just
table.
table.
No vote hearing, I think just table.
4.1, right?
Yeah, 4.2.
What are we doing with 10.3?
I took us back 2 more weeks.
Okay. Just to mention, although we'll get to it when we get to the resolutions, we have the Jackson Hill. 10.5 is allowing the VA to execute a discharge of mortgage at 1209 Summit Avenue, Unit 416. 10.6 we did, 10.7 and 10.8 both deal with Jackson Hill, Main Street, special improvement. We're approving their budget and assessment roll. 10.9 is to subordinate the city's mortgages to one new first mortgage and execute a revised loan modification agreement with Ocean MLK Urban Renewal Associates LP, Jackson Green. We did 10.10.
Sorry, 10.9. Could we have a comment about this? What's the status of this project? Is it?
Let me get an answer on that. Okay.
Do you know, Joanne? Councilman Robinson?
Yeah.
10.9, do you know the status of this?
I know.
Just asking. So,
That's the same question.
okay.
Okay, we have judge appointments, 1011 and 1012, Kalima Ahmad and Margaret Marley, they're both reappointments. Ahmad as a part-timer and Margaret Marley as a full-time. 1013, seems that Marlene has been busy. 10.13 through 10.18 are all ceremonial resolutions. Honoring the Knights of Rizal, honoring Sion E. Lee, remembering Don Wilson Sr., he passed.
We did.
Wow. Yeah. Resolution recognizing Louis Parisi, resolution recognizing Lito Gahilan, thank you. Right up your alley, that one was. Resolution recognizing Virginia Calabrese and Louisa Montserrat. 1019, we're buying ammunition for our police department. Lawman Supply Company for premium rifle ammunition.
Is this regular ammunition, or is this the one that was discussed with the council?
replacing.
Just replace it.
This is not the special?
No.
No.
Okay.
This is replacing what.
We jump to 24, ratifying the execution of a waiver, indemnity, and hold harmless agreement with Wind Journal Square Partners Urban Renewal for property used in connection with the funeral service of Detective Joseph Seal. 1025 and 1026 are both settlements. One is entitled Indigo Hatcher, be the City of Jersey City, and the other David Sierra, be the City of Jersey City.
You should have received memos on that last month. If you did not get those, please let me know.
1027 is an annual event authorizing a professional services contract to Strulwitz and Gargiulo, physical occupational therapy for city employees injured on the job. 1028, renewing a professional services agreement with Law Office of Werner Suarez to represent the city of Jersey City in the matter of Ann Doyle. 10:29 was done. 10:30, we're renewing
Can we get
a,
an update on the Ann Doyle litigation?
You want to do a closed session at the next caucus?
If that's amenable, yeah.
Did you read it? We start at 4. You were,
I can be there.
you gonna be at 4?
Closed session would be
We have to push them
tomorrow, on Wednesday? No.
the next 4.
it's on a
So it's
Tuesday.
20
It's on a Tuesday, you remember.
We could do it before the
22nd?
council meeting. It doesn't even have to be this one, it could be the next one. Like at 5 o'clock or something like that.
Is that good with you? 'Cause you-
On a Wednesday.
Well, we'll have to prepare, the memo, the resolution
Would have to be
authorizing
prepared
would have
for
to be
this meeting.
for.
Okay.
So, Council President, what time do we want to do it for?
5, you said? Because we know you're 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
You want to do 5 o'clock on the day of the caucus or on the day of the council?
Council meeting.
So the 23rd.
23rd.
23rd, Thursday the 23rd.
Is that Wednesday 23rd, Wednesday 22nd?
It's the
What do you
23rd.
think? Go
Can I
ahead.
get a suggestion? And this is actually for Peter and Norma.
Peter.
Yeah, I'm listening.
You know, I don't know what other types of litigation we have, but if we're gonna take an hour to do a closed caucus, my thought is maybe, I don't know if there are other things that maybe come in that you guys know of, so we can make the resolution for this meeting extensive, so we can cover more than just, like in the next 2 months, if there are anything you think we should cover.
Well, I think if that were the case, and if I could suggest possibly, if you want us to do a extensive update on status of all litigation, we could do, I just don't know if we could be prepared to do that meaningfully in 2 weeks.
No, I don't think
Or,
you can.
and if we can do it in an hour here.
Right, it wouldn't take the time.
Yeah,
We can just do a short one and then.
do it on the 12th.
Okay, so we'll,
Okay. 10:30, we did 29. Okay, sorry, no. Cal Cagney Konevsky to represent Ed Toloza, former BA Robert Kakaleski, Mohammed Akil, former chief of staff from the city of Jersey City in the matter of Roxanne Mays, be the city of Jersey City. Going down the last bit on the agenda, 10:35, authorizing a professional services agreement with the law firm of McManaman, Scotland and Bauman to provide local land use council services for the 6th Street embankment settlement.
We had hired a different attorney, correct?
yes, there was a, thank you for asking, there was a potential conflict of interest that was raised regarding prior councils, a client of prior council they had for planning board matters, and it was deemed prudent to proceed without any potentiality of a conflict.
Okay.
So there are no additional, there haven't been any bills at all.
Okay, 10:36 is an agreement with the law firm of Brody Greenan LLC to represent Joseph Menendez and Mark A. Petroselli in the matter of Vanessa Grosky of the city of Jersey City. 10:37 would be Councilman Solomon's extension of the rent leveling committee. Affordable housing committee.
Sorry.
We're gonna,
Can we go back to 10:35?
sure, let me just, if I could just mention that 10:38 would be the closed caucus for 123 for the Ann Doyle.
Okay.
It's 123, I'm sorry.
So 10:35.
At 5 o'clock.
The 6th Street embankment. So we had discussed, and you were going to give us some legal guidance. I don't miss it as to what. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm really asking because I don't check my emails regularly as I should. So I was. You were going to provide us legal guidance as to what we could articulate and talk about in the public on.
No, it's fine. I think part of what's complicating that from the city's standpoint is that we are essentially co-defendants on all aspects of this with the embankment coalition. So anything that we authorize, essentially discussion or disclosure of, we need to get buy-in from them as well. So I apologize for not getting more of that information to you. I can get more detailed information to you by the end of the week.
Okay, great.
Okay, to adjourn at 6:25. Brindary.
Second.
By Ridley.
That's not.
By all 9 members, we have all 9 members in attendance. Say goodnight, everyone, at 6:26.
Council President.